No, I see, and I read your point about the issue when it comes to Israel, but fundamentally, and this is what I find hard to get my head around when we talk about this, is that there are still over 100 hostages held by Hamas. So while there is a push for Israel to say, okay, let's have a ceasefire, there's still over 100 people held hostage by that terrorist group. So how do you get them over the line to agree to that?
Well, the premise of the question you're asking is that the only way for Israel to be able to get its hostages out is to bomb Gaza to smithereens, and that there's no other leverage Israel has. That's fundamentally not true. First of all, most of the hostages, or almost all of the hostages that have been released through some sort of a deal. But perhaps more importantly, at this level, it is not morally justifiable to say that Israel has to continue to indiscriminately bomb Gaza and kill up to 200 people a day because Hamas is still holding what is now probably less than 100 hostages. Incidentally, many of the hostages that are no longer with us are dead and killed as a result of the continued fighting, which means that the continued fighting has also seen the hostages die in the process. So if it is aimed at bringing them home, it's not only not bringing them home, it's getting them killed. This is part of the reason why the Security Council resolution that was passed did not connect the release of the hostages with the ceasefire. It demanded an immediate release of the hostages, and it also demanded a ceasefire, but without connecting them, without making them contingent upon each other. Because if you were to make them contingent upon each other, then you would justify the current slaughter in Gaza because the hostages are held. And that's not a logic that most countries in the world are willing to accept.
How close were we to see that flare out of control, those direct strikes between Israel and Iran? How close were things? As you've written in your piece in the newspaper today, they were both able to get out and save face to an extent, but without it flaring uncontrollably. How close did things get?
I think, unfortunately, it was very, very close to the Israelis striking Iran as hard as they could, more or less, which then almost would guarantee that we would have a regional war. And that's why, at the end of the day, there is deserved that the Biden administration, there's credit that the Biden administration deserves because of the avoidance of that. And just to understand how close we were, take a look at what the National Security Minister of Israel tweeted. He said lame. He was clearly not in agreement with the strategy that the Israeli government ended up choosing, which was not to go for a major strike, and blasted it publicly, which is quite astonishing in and of itself.